Hi, Mr. McLogan. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Adi. How about yourself?
I'm doing amazing as well, actually. I had something to say. I've been watching your videos for the past 5, 6 years, I think, ever since I was in fifth grade. So this is like a fanboy moment for me
Uh,
right now.
well, I'm very happy
Yeah.
that my videos that could help you with your math and inspire you obviously to reach out to me for to
No,
kind of answer some
definitely.
questions, stuff like that. I think it's really cool what when I started my channel. I know we got into it, but it's like I originally made videos just for students around my classroom, and then you just think about the impact, like you can have your videos transcend all over the world. I think it's just a really cool thing, especially
Exactly,
the fact that we
exactly,
can have this
exactly.
conversation today.
So, I mean, I think you've been in the teaching industry or career. I'm sorry, like for 14 years, I think.
Yep.
14, 15
Yeah, I was a
years,
classroom teacher
from
for
what I saw.
14 years. Yep.
Classroom teacher. Okay, okay, okay. Nice, nice, nice. And after that, is it like online tutoring and stuff? I think.
Well, yeah, that's what I kind of do now. I mean, it's just like with I just continue making videos on my channel. So I still consider myself a teacher by trade,
Okay, yeah.
but yeah, just not in the traditional classroom setting.
Okay, 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 okay. Understood, understood. And actually, this is something I just discovered a day back. This is not your first podcast. This is your second podcast. I think you did one with John and Mike.
Yes, yes, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's one thing that I forgot to research you on, but thankfully I figured that out like just a few hours before logging into this meeting. And I think that makes it easier for us to talk. The more I know about you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I enjoy the podcast setting. I think it's a really, really cool environment. I've always thought about even doing something myself, like as like a podcast, because I just like the idea of being able to talk with people and kind of getting those more in depth discussions. And yeah, so I really like the format a lot. So I'm really happy to be here.
Amazing. That's amazing to hear. That's amazing to hear. I mean, yeah. So I have a few questions prepared. A little nervous, but I'm gonna ask them to you. So, Mr. McLogan, I used to be terrified of mathematics. I think I still am terrified of mathematics. Luckily, your videos have made it a little bit easier. But why do you think students fear this subject?
Um, I think with I think one of times I think a lot of times how we are first introduced to math, at least in like the learning kind of environment, is the fact that it's either like you're good at math or you're not. And I think we kind of have that binary approach where it's like you either got the goods or you don't got the goods, right? And so I think when
Yeah.
students have experienced some failure or maybe some struggles, they immediately start to equate that with this isn't something I'm going to be good at and or nothing that I can get
Hmm.
better at or be able to achieve or anything like that. So it immediately becomes something that you're not good at and that or you can't be good at, and so you're not going to like, you're going to fear it. And that's I think that's just a very natural thing for students to be able to have, and I think that comes into a lot of that teaching is like, oh, you're either a math person or you're not a math person, right? Some people are so easy
Hmm.
to just to say because it's kind of comforting, like, oh, I'm just not a math person, and therefore that kind of like can helps them accept that math is, but in reality math is not a binary, math people and non-math people. It's not like that, but I think from the initial fears from math, feels like it's either you can do it or if you can't do it, then at least you think back, like I know my parents would say it's like, oh, if you weren't like top of the class, like go and sit in the back of the go and sit in the back of the class, and
Hmm.
like you're just not going to be good at this stuff. And so yeah,
Right,
like
right.
so then you're forced to continue taking the class, and still I would say punished, for not doing well or not knowing it or not being like top of the class, which I think is just
Hmm.
it's a um, it's just not a reality. It's not something that is attainable, that everybody's going to be a great math student at the same time in the
Yeah.
same class, right? So I think that's why a lot of people just, kind of fear, because we have these unreal expectations that you have to understand math like now or this day or this month or this quarter,
Yeah, yeah.
whatever it may be. So it can be it can be a lot to take on. And so, you know, I could definitely see where the fear creeps in.
Yeah, yeah. But did you always like this subject?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Did you always like this subject, the math subject?
No, I mean, I didn't like math at all either. When I was in high school, the same kind of thing. Like I struggled with math, and so it wasn't something that I was particularly good at as well. I wouldn't say so much I feared it, but it was definitely not like my top of the line, subject that I wanted to focus on. I think what the I was like good enough in it where I just enjoyed a little bit of it. But yeah, I wouldn't say I feared it or I was really good at it. It was definitely something that I had to work hard to get better at for sure.
Yeah. But I mean, everyone loves math. But what caused you to become a math teacher? Like that, make it your entire life, make it your entire career. Like you used to hate it, right?
Mm-hmm.
As you said. How did you grow into loving the subject and becoming a math teacher?
I think what it was is like I feel like I have like a little bit, and I know I guess I got to be careful with that, like using like that natural ability. Which I mean, of course, there are people that have that natural mathematical ability, right? We can't just say like everybody's equal. Like there are people that have more of a natural inclination for mathematics than others. However, but that is to say, like not to say that you can't overcome some of those struggles that are going on with your learning and education and mathematics. But I think naturally, just for the person who I am, I have a little bit of a more of a natural, gift also with like teaching, with, helping people. And that's just something I build off of, like, or I feed off of. Like, I enjoy, helping people just learn. And it doesn't have to be mathematics, literally anything. And I kind of knew that, I would say at like a younger age, I really enjoyed coaching. I was doing sports, and I remember like they had wrestling club, and a lot of times like I would stay after from my wrestling meet or my wrestling practice to like help with the younger kids. Like I just enjoyed teaching and helping others. So when I was in high school, I had some really good role models that I think were my teachers that I just really looked up to. I'm like, this is what I'd like to be. They're obviously my coaches as well. So they're coaches in my sports. They taught high school. So I just kind of aspired to want to be like them. And when I had to make the choice though, it's like, you're going to be a teacher. Like, what are you going to teach? And there's really nothing I really enjoyed. Like nothing really took that passion for me of like teaching. I just knew I wanted to become a teacher and coach and do all those kind of things. And really math was just kind of like the one I liked the most. I definitely wasn't the best at, but it was just one I'm like, I kind of enjoyed it. And we'll just kind of put it like a
Like you kind of relate to it.
Huh?
You kind of relate to it. Is that what you're saying? Like
I could relate to it, yeah, because like I mean my mom was a math teacher, so I mean that obviously I'd say had some impact to it.
it's in your genes now.
Yeah, and like my sports coaches were all math teachers as well, so I think that obviously influenced things. But I mean I didn't have
Okay.
I didn't have flaming A's. I mean I don't think I ever got an A. Maybe one or maybe a couple of A's in high school, like quarters A's. So I mean, I wasn't like a very strong math student and like into doing my math homework at all, into studying or anything like that. Like math was just kind of one of those. I think what I liked about math was the puzzle aspect. I liked the idea of like figuring things out and seeing those answers and seeing different ways to approach, the problems. I like that problem solving aspect, which I still do nowadays. And
Okay.
I think that's what kind of drew me into mathematics and from on there. But it wasn't until my college years where I really actually developed a kind of, I would say like that love of mathematics.
Okay. All right. I understand. And I mean, what you're trying to say is that the more you get your answers correct in this subject, the more you will grow to love it. That the more you like it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean,
Something
obviously
like
having success in math, helps out. Obviously, if you're just failing and struggling, like nobody wants to continue doing that.
Then you're just like,
you
it
know,
is what it is.
Yeah, but I mean, I definitely struggled. I mean, one of my, thing I talk about on my channel a lot is like I had D's my senior year in pre-calculus. Like I was not destined to be a math teacher or a math YouTube person. You're right. When I was in high school, like I'm earning D's in pre-calculus. But I think what really triggered me in college is when I really made the pivot of understanding and learning and loving mathematics was the fact of like, one, I took it seriously for like being successful. Like I had I had an idea of goal of like, I'm becoming a math teacher. Like I want to learn what I didn't learn, right? I was actually interested in the sport. Whereas when I was in high school, I was just doing math to pass class. Like I just give me the grade. It was just a transaction. I wasn't actually trying to learn anything. I was just trying to get by. But it wasn't until college where I was like, all right, I actually have to learn this stuff. And actually, once you started to learn things and I started to see the connections, that's where I was like, oh, stuff is actually even better than I thought, right? Before I just liked math because, I liked, obviously there'd be some problems here or there, like, oh, that's kind of cool. Or, you see some things that are kind of interesting. But it wasn't until I really started learning the material, seeing the connections, and learning some better, like some more difficult math where you actually get to apply some of those mathematical connections. You're like, I remember, that common phrase, like math is everywhere. And it's like, once you start going into upper level mathematics, you're like, holy crap, like, I see it now. Like and also you also see of how little, right? You think you're like, oh, I've taken all these math classes. Like I, know so much math. And it's like, no, it's like the more you know, the more you don't know. Like it's almost scary of how much more math, of how much of an amateur in mathematics you are, the more you learn.
Right. I mean, I think I have reached that level where I think for me, the assumption was that math is only applicable to the real world to a certain extent. Like after calculus, I have no idea where that fits into this world. So, can you explain exactly how the higher concepts of math fit into this world and what they can be used for?
Well, I mean, I think it's way above my pay grade to try to be explaining some upper level math, concepts. Because again, to be honest with you, that's really not one of those things that actually inspires or gets like me motivated. A lot of people talk about like, oh, like, we need to learn math because like the application of math and how it's applied. And a lot of people, they really enjoy that, and that's kind of more like the physics side, that applied, mathematics and, with the engineers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's a lot of great mathematicians out there, or like research channel that like shows like the applications of the stuff we learn. And you probably are familiar with some of your, maybe lower end mathematics where it's like the funny math problem. Like you have 99 bananas and, like these crazy weird math problems that they're just trying to make it relatable. Right. And it's not relatable, but it's like they're trying.
It's not. It's absurd,
it's like,
actually, the amount.
Yeah. It's so, I mean, I think the thing that I love about math, and which I think is the beauty of mathematics is the patterns and seeing those patterns, within there. And so and the cool thing about, especially like pure mathematics is and that's just kind of more of like, you just say like a foundation approach. You don't even know where it's going to apply to. You don't even know how it's going to be used, but it's just being able to keep on using mathematics, interpreting mathematics, and applying these the mathematical concepts, and just looking at the understanding the relationships between within the fields of mathematics. And I think just for me, realizing and seeing those patterns and how things are connected that's like what the beauty, that's like what gets me like excited. Like that gets my like math nerd of like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like I never knew this before. And like, now I see it, or now I see how whatever I learned here is now connected to what I'm doing now. And then a lot of people will get excited about like how they can take a mathematical concept like in pure mathematics and apply it to some new engineering feat, or, anything like that. To me, that doesn't excite me as much as far as how math is everywhere in the real world, right? Which it is. Like you see so many different applications of it. But for me, it's more of just like how math all fits together, and that beauty and that relationship, and those patterns that we can use math to be able to see things.
So you're like grown with math, I think. You have grown to like it. Math, you have grown along with math. As the subject kept getting harder, you're like, okay, I need to sit down, and it was like a relationship with the mathematics subject, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think that's the important thing that I want to come across to you and any listeners is like math is something that is not you get it or you don't get it, and like boom, you're done. Like, oh, you got an F like in this class, you didn't understand it, like that's it, you're good. Like it's not, it's a everlasting learning opportunity. Like, and I think one of the best things is like, even on like YouTube, I love watching other people, teach, or like thing. You're like, why would you, like, you already know how to teach the subject. You have hundreds of videos on this. Why would you want to watch somebody else's explanation? And it's like, because you actually take away, so, and that's why like teachers, you might have heard the common statement, like, I learn more from you guys than you learn from me, or, something like that.
I know exactly.
To that effect, and you're like, how? You've been teaching for 30 years. Like, how are you actually learning something from us? But it's the same respect. Like every year I was always learning something new. And it is completely true, because every year there's different students that are asking different questions, having a different way of looking at a problem, or a concept, and you start to see it in a different light. And I think that's what I like about watching maybe another instructor, or like even a TikTok video. Like you see somebody explaining something differently, and it might be the exact same thing or something you've heard 100 times. Right. And that's why sometimes I feel like I even get credit. Like I'm not like have a different way of explaining things, but it's like, or I'm explaining different topics. It's like, no, I'm a different voice than what you have heard. And sometimes it helps you see a different connection from on there. And I think that's what I would say have grown to love about mathematics is like, yeah, it's like, I feel, I feel I'm constantly learning and taking in newer connections, as time goes on. And like, that's what I enjoy about math, is that it's this endless idea of knowledge and patterns that you can just, keep on developing if you're willing to, put in that work and to learn from it. But if you're going to, treat it that it's whatever I had in class and like, boom, that's it, and I'm not going to learn anymore, well, then yeah, you're right. The doors have closed, right? But if you're willing to open those doors and continue learning and keeping your ideas open, that you can still learn math or learn concepts, like your whole life can be a learning opportunity, which I think is a beautiful, wonderful thing.
Are you still learning things in math till this day?
Yeah. I mean, like I said, there's one thing I've kind of got a little backed up on. One of the reasons why I wanted to step away from the classroom was because I wanted to continue to pursue more of my mathematical journey. It was really something that I had a hard time when I was in college. I remember stepping away saying, okay, because you had to make that decision, right? It's like, all right, do I go on to get my master's, or continue my educational journey, or do you go to the real world and start making money, right? And like get a job.
Right.
I, there was that thought of me. I'm like, I really enjoy learning math. I really enjoy taking these classes and like continuing this. But I think obviously there was the point to where I'm like, all right, you went to college to become a teacher. So become a teacher, make some money, and like, and go down that route. You can always go back and learn math, which is true. And one thing I've kind of found out my time is obviously, having kids at home and dealing with YouTube, as more of as a business rather than just like a side project. It's, taking up a lot more time. But one of my goals this year was to do, continue like doing more math every day. And I think that's, for me, that's something that's really important for me to continue practicing and learning and, just doing more math. Cause obviously I do math while I'm making videos and preparing for, my content and stuff like that. But I think just, also to be continuously learning new concepts, is going to be helpful for me as well.
So it's really the concept that inspires you more, right? It's the concept, it's the journey with math that you like.
I mean, that inspires me. I mean, as far as like learning math, I mean, what I think what inspires me most with math is just learning like the relationships of how things are connected to one another, and to an extent how they can be applied in a real life, kind of setting, but really just how math is all intertwined with itself. I think to me is the most interesting thing. I like learning about math is like the pure math, not so much of like, oh, how can this can be applied to like building a car or a ramp, but it's just like, no, how does like what we're learning about, logarithms, relate to what we learned about in third grade of like multiplying digits, it's just like those connections and everything like that. That's what I just kind of find fascinating of learning math on my own and also as well teaching it.
I mean, yeah, and about the thing that you said about the YouTube videos, right? I mean, unless you don't get distracted and then you go to Instagram and all that, YouTube is a very it's a very potent like vessel of ideas, especially for math videos and stuff. And yeah, exactly as you were rephrasing those people saying like, why are there so many videos? You know, all you need is one. Actually, for me, it's been similar. I've checked out a lot of math tutorials. Some have been screen shares, some have been direct videos, some have been straight up like cinematic masterpieces. You know what I mean? But yeah, of course, there are only very few math tutors in this world on YouTube that your puzzle piece can actually fit in. You understand? Like it's yeah, completely agreed. Completely agreed on that part as well. Okay, so you know that video that you posted about the worst class ever.
Mm-hmm.
I actually thought it was real first. I thought it was real. But then, of course, after that, I figured out that since the students are in on it and you didn't actually upload an embarrassing moment like this, like, okay, it's scripted. But what was your thought process on that? Like, how did you get the entire class to agree doing that? Or why did you think of making that video in the first place? What was the backstory on that?
Well, I mean, the funny thing is, like, this is just the epitome to how, like, YouTube works. So the real whole story with that video was it was just, I mean, you got to think back in the day when I would teach, I didn't have time to edit or do anything with my YouTube videos. I would literally teach, record as many videos as I could record, and then I literally would bulk upload every day, like 20 to 40 videos on YouTube.
Wow.
So,
I
that
mean,
is just
you have math classes every day, so yeah.
right. Yeah. So, I mean, that's literally what, for almost 8-10 years, like that's just what I did every day was just record and bulk upload, throw in a title, and then I'd go back later and like add thumbnails and descriptions and stuff like that. And
That's
that was
what
my
made
life,
you famous.
Yeah, I mean that's how you get 12,000 videos right on YouTube from on there. So it's it was a long process from on there, and so like that video was so what it was one of my students wanted to do like the Harlem Shake. That was like a video trend. I don't even remember the year that was, maybe 2014 if I remember correctly. But anyways, they're gonna do they want to do the Harlem Shake. So part of it was like, to like roast me as a teacher, and then he was going to kick me out, and then they were going to do like the Harlem Shake, and like they turn the camera to all the other students and to him. And so he had the idea and he was going to do it. I'm like, all right, like, just trying to be a little bit more relevant, I guess, in my students' life, have something a little bit more fun, so it's not just the drab of math class
Definitely.
every day. So I was like, all right, let's go and do it. And then, and obviously, like, I was on YouTube at that time, so like they knew, like they wanted to be not so much YouTube famous, but like have something on, on the channel.
Right.
And so yeah, I did it. But then he chickened out, and so if you like watch at the end, and, it's like I'm like, come on, whatever else, and I just edited it. But so like that video was just one of my 30 videos, that I uploaded that day. So I mean, I literally just uploaded it. I'm like, what do I title this? And I have no idea. I'm like, worst video ever. And the funny thing is, like, or worst class ever. But if you look at the history of that video, I mean, it was on for maybe 4 to 5 years with like 100 views. Like, I mean, it was maybe 1,000. I have no idea. Like, it got no views. And then whatever else, like somebody watched it or shared it or something, and then it was like, boom! All right, now we got a million. Like, it was like crazy, and I'm like, I don't know how to like respond to these. It's so old, and it was just it was a makeshift, kind of video in that regard. But yeah, it just happened by half chance. I mean, that's all that video was from in there. But it was funny.
That's how
it's
the
just,
internet works.
Right, yeah, exactly. And like so it's just an older video that decided to pop off for the oddest of reasons, Ken. But it's, I think also it kind of gave you, I think from looking at the comments, it gives people a little bit of idea of kind of you kind of get like that vintage of old house schools, like, me a little bit older, back in the day. I think also too, it kind of gives like that, people always talk about like, oh, how bad your class was, and like, how can they treat a teacher like that? So I think there's like some of that, maybe like, I'm going to say like relatability, but also that, You know, like why would they treat somebody like that, you know, so bad, even if, you know, they didn't know it was a parody from the beginning. But yeah, I think it's just a funny thing how that video kind of took a life of its own.
Did you feel as happy that it became famous after so long? Do you think you would have felt the same amount of excitement if it became famous? I don't know, the day after you uploaded it. Were you still like excited? Like, oh my god, my video got like 1 million views. Like, was that same level of excitement over there?
No, not so much. Just because, especially, I think now I just knew it was just like by half chance, you know, like that video took off. I think definitely if it would have taken off from when me making it, that would have gone much more to my head and especially my students' head of like, ooh, I can create something, you know, that will be viral, you know, and like, so let's try to do it again, right? Whereas it taking off, well, I think it was last year, I just knew, or maybe the year before, I can't remember, but it was like, I just knew it was what it was, right? It wasn't like, I wasn't like unlocking any code to like, I can make viral videos or something. Like it was a video that took a life of its own. It is what it is. Enjoy the ride and continue what you're doing, you know? But I definitely think if I was like, yeah, back in the classroom, like, ooh, let's make more, you know, let's try to continue this ride. And it probably would have ended up in a whole different direction I probably didn't want to go down anyways.
What year do you think you actually realized that, wow, this amount of subscribers is unreal for a person like me? Like, when did you realize that?
I mean, I think I think with anything you get to, every stepping stone I think is as equally as important, and as exciting as the next one. Like I said, like I remember being super excited about, you know, having 1,000 followers, having 10,000. Obviously, I think YouTube, because you get the plaque, like there's that pinnacle of like 100,000, which is like so cool, and then you get to like 1,000,000, and you're like, holy crap, like this is like amazing. And then, but then it's like, but again, it's like, all right, I'm not just like, oh, I got 1,000,000, like I'm resting, you know, resting on my laurels, like I'm done, like let's go. Like it's, I have a couple other, you know, newer channels that I've, you know, started. Like it's just as exciting growing them to like 500 subscribers, to like 1,000, to 20,000. Like it's just as exciting reaching those marks. So I don't really think about it as far as the mark, especially because I know a lot of, you know, subscribers is, you know, I mean, it's just like that vanity metric. So I much more, what really gets me, or what's more important to me, is just really like reading comments, you know, from students, you know, that I've been able to help them and stuff like that. Like that gets me much more motivated and inspired than, you know, reaching another 10, like, you know, 1,000 subscribers and stuff like that. Like it's cool, right? It's nice to get a plaque, not gonna lie. You know, but again, like in the end of the day, I wouldn't say that, you know, I would much rather have a 10,000 subscriber channel and receiving the comments that I receive now than a 10 million subscriber channel and like not receiving any comments, you know, and just getting a ton of views and like nobody's like liking them or whatever. Like it's understanding, seeing that impact from people. That's what really kind of inspires and drives me. Not so much just a number of, you know, it's the same thing like those views, like, and that's even the one thing, to be honest with you, like that video has no like value. Like, I mean, it's entertainment value, right? So, but I don't feel like it's not inspiring, you know, anybody to become a teacher or to learn math or anything. So it's like, it's cool. Got 1 million views, like, or whatever it's at now. I literally don't even care about that video at all. It is what it is. Cool. Got a lot of views. I literally don't have no connection with that video. Whereas I can, you know, a video of like, whatever, it could have like 3,000 views, and if somebody's like, oh my god, I couldn't understand this for like 3 months, fail my class, but like you explained, I understand, like that means so much more to me than like getting views of people like, oh, that was really funny, cool, like, and then just move on to the next video, you know.
Right. So what kind of comments do you get now? Do you get less of the "I'm so inspired" comments, or are they still the same?
I would say mostly about the same, you know, because most of my content still is my education from me teaching inside the classroom. So yeah, most of the comments are the same. Like, you know, thank you for explaining it. You know, and really, I just, you know, I think a lot of people there's two things I think that I try to separate myself from is like one, trying to be as much to the point as possible, not trying to do 30-minute like explanation lectures. Like I have some of those on my channel, but most of my channel is like, I'm just going to teach you how to do, like, I'm going to try to go through this process as simplistic and straight to the point as I can. And then also I'm going to try to explain things, you know, at least what, from my perspective, explain things from that struggling student, which I kind of was, you know, so I think sometimes saying my instruction maybe a little bit differently sometimes gives students just a little bit different balance. So therefore, even though they probably learned the same thing from the teacher and they probably were bored, so they probably weren't paying full attention for like the hour that they're in class. And then they probably, you know, whatever explanation they did get, if I'm just saying it in a shorter and in a different little manner, you know, sometimes that allows people to like, oh, now I get it, right? It helps them that like get that aha moment from on there. So, and that's usually the majority of those comments.
Right. The next question is something that I have to properly read it out. And I think it has something to do with what you said before, like the previous question. So I'm going to try to read it. My friend actually designed this question for you. He was very passionate about getting a good answer. So even I have not understood it by myself. I'm not sure what he's trying to ask you, but let's see.
Okay.
Brian, okay. So consider your consciousness has transferred into a younger version of yourself, and you're sitting in the same classroom where you had first had your suspicions about math. Now, where maths might not be a cup of tea. Let's say that your teacher has come to personally apologize to you about what he considers to be his fault. A, would you hear his apology?
No.
You wouldn't. Why?
No. Because, like, in my, like, I think the way that I live my life is, you know, what happens. I think as a teacher, and teaching profession is always evolving. Through all the years that I taught inside the classroom, I never taught the exact same way or the exact same material. You know, I didn't like, oh, I'm just reusing my same lesson plans. Like here I'm a robot, like regurgitating stuff. Like, no, every year I was always evolving. I was always evolving how I graded stuff. I was always evolving my tests, my quizzes, my homework. Everything was always evolving. So, you know, I wouldn't go back to like my first year students and like apologize to them. Like, hey, I'm sorry. Like, you know, I was, you know, you didn't get a good McLogan, you know, beginning like, well, obviously I became a better teacher the more I instructed, right? And my class. And I think the same way is like, you know, from how teaching is, you know, how the educational framework was in like the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, you know, everything like that, like how society viewed things and our expectations were all different. So I wouldn't expect an apology. I think most teachers do the best they can with what they are given and what they believe, you know, at that given certain time. And I think the main thing that we want to do is, you know, just keep on evolving and just trying to keep on getting better. I think also the important thing about the reason why I would not take a no or an apology is because by saying no or by saying like an apology, like I am now disregarding anything that made me better from that experience rather than and saying like, oh, if you would have apologized, if I would have had my education different, I would have been better, which I don't know if that's the case. I mean, obviously you can't go back in time and change things. So I think it's a dangerous precedent to be like, well, if you would have been, if I would, let's say, like, put it this way, if I would have been my own teacher right now, would I have been a better teacher for myself back in the day? Right. And I don't know because like you think about like, you know, I had to go through my struggles. And, you know, I took some things out of that bad experience in math from struggles in math, right? I mean, I became who I am. Like if you were to say my teacher was to apologize and I would have gotten a better education, right? All the things that we say, like how math can be better and how we can teach better. Okay. Fair enough. Fair argument enough. But if you're going to now go back in time, like, would I still be here, a math teacher, if I had that better education that I want now? I don't know. I probably wouldn't be I probably wouldn't have been a math teacher. I probably wouldn't have been, you know, because I think what made me become a math teacher, you know, and I didn't mention this before, but also it's like, yes, math was one of those math was one of those subjects I did like. But there was also another part of me, which I forgot to mention, was like, I remember sitting in class. I remember having this thought in my mind. I'm like, I don't like how this is being taught to me. This doesn't reach me. I want to become a better, like, I want to teach math a different way. I want to become like a better math teacher than this. And like, so like that was a motivation of mine, you know, was like to somehow have an impact on math education. Obviously you like had no idea how that was even going to happen. I don't even think YouTube wasn't even around back then, you know? So like, you don't even have that idea, you know, going in your brain, but it was like, I want to make an impact in, you know, like on teaching math. And so yeah, I think, you know, my teachers with what they had, with where we were as a society and as educators at that moment in time, I think they did the best, you know, they were expected to do. But yeah, no, I would actually say like, thank you to them rather than an apology. I think a thank you is like for, you know, that experience, and you could take the good or the bad, is what made me who I am today, right? That had an impact on who I have become. And so I guess that's the way that I would look at framing that as like, how whatever past experience may be good and bad, like that has helped me become who I am. And I believe that to be a better person. So I wouldn't take it back, or I wouldn't say they could have done better, or they should have done better, or they should apologize.
Have you ever had a student hate you and actually show it? Like, I do not like your stuff, you know? Have you ever had that?
Yeah.
You've had that?
Almost every year. There would always be students. I mean,
Oh.
there'd be students, they didn't like me for my personality. Sometimes I can have dry humor inside the classroom, which is not ideal for a lot of teachers, or, you know, at least in the educational space. Like, no, don't be sarcastic or dry humor, like, you know, but it's also like a lot who I am, you know? So it's like, it was very hard to bottle that all the time. It's just me, you know? So there are a lot of students that did not relate to me at all. And then there was a lot of students that hated me because, you know, they didn't get the grades they wanted, you know, when I was their teacher. So
that's yeah. I mean,
yeah. I mean, that's part of the
teaching is something. Yeah.
the armor you got to wear, but
I think in terms of teaching, from what I've learned, is that the teacher is responsible to some degree for making the student successful in that particular class, but I think that it's also the student's responsibility to absorb all that stuff, actually make an effort to try to understand, because the teacher is not going to shove it into you. Teacher is going to teach you something, and then you have to understand it by yourself, because it's your brain at the end of the day. So I think sometimes, even in my class, when a teacher hates a student, when a student hates a teacher, it's mostly due to their problems, because they were lazy, they were slacking off throughout the entire year, and they're like, you make the question so hard, why do you hate me so much, you know, like, I mean, yeah, I'm not sure how it was in your case, but I feel like it's mostly the student's fault, but it's not that I have an opinion on it, but yeah, from personal experiences,
yeah,
it's a confusing thing, actually. I think a person will never be able to figure out if it's the teacher's or the student's fault, because of how it's all in our brains, am I right?
I mean, I think so. I mean, I would say, I'm not going to say all teachers are perfect and fair and have grading policies that are coherent. You know, like there's definitely some inequities, I think, on the teaching profession as well. And I think some very honest gripes that students can have with how teachers apply grades and stuff like that. But I think one thing that I always valued myself with the student when they didn't like their grade or whatever may be the case, you know, I always wanted to, you know, look them in the eye and like get on the same page. I'm like, do you believe, like, you might not agree with the grade, you might hate the C or the B or the F or whatever, but I'm like, is how I am assessing you, you know, fair? Like, do you feel like you are being fairly assessed? And like, they could say no, and it's like, okay, well, let's look at it, and then let me understand, you know. And they could say, well, I want more, you know, grades for doing homework. I'm like, well, I have, you know, the homework's gonna only be so much percent because I give you the answers that you know, and you know, you have limited time for that. Like, I need to assess you in certain things. So, you know, you're right. I think it is. A lot of times students will take their personal kind of failures out on the teacher. Like obviously there's always going to be somebody that's going to want to take that blame on there, but I think the important thing is also, which we still need to strive to, I think we're striving to that point, is like having a grading system that that I think is like, that is, I don't want to say, I want to, not sure I can say this correctly, but like, or that I feel that, I'll just say fair, and to the perspective,
Fair,
like
okay.
that accurately judges a student's understanding and gives them opportunity to continually learn and do better. And my one point for saying is like, or at least, quick little like quib is like, a lot of times students will like fail and it's like, boom, that's it. Like they have no other opportunity to be able to learn from their mistakes or improve upon their grade, and stuff like that. Like, so having, I think, some of those opportunities, but also having like, you have to be able to perform. You just can't, retake everything and get an A, right? Or just turn in homework that
definitely.
the answer's online and like get an A. So it's a balance. It's really difficult, and it changes from teacher to teacher. It changes from school to school. It changes from country and state to state. Like, and there is no standardized way, I believe, either. So that's where I think we kind of have that quandary. It's like you can't just make a ideal, grading policy that's going to work for everybody. So it's a balancing act, and I think that's the tough part about it.
Yeah. Now, my definition of a perfect teacher must be much different from yours, but what is your definition? I mean, I'm pretty sure that you also agree on this fact that no one's perfect, no teacher is perfect. But let's say there was a criteria for a perfect teacher, or close to perfect teacher. What would that be for you? And do you think, have you reached there, or how do you think it is?
Well, I mean, I definitely don't think I've reached it by any means. And even that was one of the harder things actually stepping away from the classroom was like, it's like how much more room is there, I guess, to improve? And not so much how much more room. Of course, there's a ton of room, but it's like, it's like you can't like. I think the thing of like trying to achieve a better version of yourself, right, inside the classroom, and it's like, looking at the different ways, I was like, all right, step away from the classroom. I'm kind of putting an end to my ability to be like refining my craft inside as a classroom teacher. And so that was kind of a thing to like hard to walk away from. It's like, all right, I'm going to kind of like stop evolving as a teacher because you're always evolving. I think any teacher will never say you're done improving yourself as a teacher. Every year you are striving to get better and better, and you're improving with your relationships, with your instruction, with your classroom management and grade, everything on from there. For me, and I also look at this teacher perspective from a parent because now I have kids inside of the classroom. And so it makes me think of like, what is it I want what is important for me as a parent to have as far as teacher for my children, which gives me a little bit different perspective as far as from me being the student as well as me being a teacher, right? It kind of gives me that triangular approach. And I think one thing that by far by none always comes up is when I'm thinking about the teaching profession is, that they care about the students. They care about the students' well-being. They care about the students being inside their class. They care about, how their students are doing and being successful. Like, and I think that's one thing where I kind of had that natural ability where it's like, I really enjoyed it. I get excited to, step inside the classroom, see the kids every single day. You get excited, you hearing about, your kids' kind of transformation from the beginning of the year to the end. And so I think just that caring, and that was one thing too, like that kind of made my decision easy for me to step away was, with everything I had going on, like having my extra, kids at home now, like having 3 kids, it's like my time was just getting so spread apart, especially with YouTube, like trying to invest more in that. I was like, I can't care as much about my kids as I used to. And, that's impacting how I'm being a teacher. That's impacting what I'm able to give inside the classroom. And that was really the one thing where I'm like, it's time to get out. Like, don't be that teacher that just shows up. Kids know you don't care. Kids know you're not putting the effort. Like, don't be that guy. Like, get out of the profession. It's much better for you to not have a teaching vacancy, than just being that teacher that's just the stand-in. That's just as there.
Exactly.
Here's your worksheets, kids. Like watch it. Once you're finished, we'll put on something on TV. Like nobody wants that for their kids. Nobody wants that, as their teacher. So it's like, and not to say like that's what I was but I was like my last year teaching. I was like, my motivation was like, I was doing as much acting as possible to try to be like as motivated and engaged. And COVID obviously played a part in that. And, you're wearing masks, you have COVID. I have 3 kids at home. I have YouTube going on. I'm like, it was just like, you know what? It's time to get out. So I think somebody that's that cares about the profession, cares about their instruction and their kids. I think also cares about I think somebody that is, caring about like teaching, like obviously involving, like teaching the concepts, and teaching the math. Like obviously you've got to care about the people and the transaction. But I think the best teacher, has really that, has that involvement of like the learning process. And I think just the ability to like, one thing I've said, but I really want to highlight it is like the learning is not just like, oh, you didn't understand something. Okay, you're not a math student. Go and sit in the back of the classroom like you're done. It's like, no, it's like, to be honest with you, we don't need teachers. We don't need teachers to teach us stuff, right? We have books online. We have videos online. Like you can learn anything you want to without a teacher. But the teacher is really there to, as that guide, as that coach, to really kind of take you by the hand and be like, I'm going to help you. Like you're going to fail. I'm going to get you back up and we're going to, and like that part of it comes into caring about the, the people that are in the classroom. But I think it also cares about like the learning process and like, let me look for different ways. Like I can tell you how many different, like when I was trying to teach people the concepts, you're right. I had to differentiate. Like some kids, I could just like give them a lesson and then like, they're good. Like I'll see you on test day. And then other kids, like they would have to fail and stay after school. And like, I'm going to teach you, or let me teach you a different way. And let me teach you, like give me some different resources. Like, I think just like the caring about that learning, process and obviously of your, content subject to be able to really help students become a better version, of themselves. And I think that is the learning process that I think I really want teachers to, care about. And it's not just about giving kids grades like, oh, your kid failed, they need to retake it. And, kind of being like this arbiter of like, if they have to get by me to go to the next class, rather than like, how many kids can I take along with me? And I think that's the important thing that I think the best teachers have is like that gift to be able to really help people learn. And that caring that they want their students to be successful and they want to be able to show them whatever they need to do to help them get to that point. And I'd probably say the last thing, which kind of comes a little bit, not really counterintuitive, but sometimes people think of it as, is having high expectations for your students. Because I think the best things that we get is when the most is expected of us. And so a lot of times I think teachers, especially younger teachers, and this was me myself. I remember when I first became a teacher, I was like, I got to have high expectations, but I didn't have the first two aspects. Like I didn't really care as much about the students or like the learning process. I just had high expectations. So what happened? Like, of course, some kids get by, right? And they kind of like you, but a lot of students like, you're just a mean math teacher, right? You're just trying, making us look stupid, feel stupid, and it's either you're good in your class and like you're the favorite, or you're bad and you suck at math and you're, you don't care about us, which was not the truth. But like looking back at my time as a teacher, I can see, I'm like, they didn't think I cared about them. They didn't see me replicate or me adjust, my learning my learning instruction to help them out, which I also think is also goes back to like that second point. You got to be flexible. You got to be able to adapt as a teacher. But I think the main thing is like, going back into that high expectations, like when students know that you care about you, or you care about them, when students know that you're willing to do whatever it takes to help them be successful, because the thing is, nobody wants to fail, right? Failing sucks. And when you fail a math test or you're not understanding something, you're just banging your head against the wall. Like, I don't understand this, and nothing making sense. Nobody wants to do it. Nobody wants to, like you said, like you have a fear of math. You just want to give up. Like, why go through the struggle? But when you have a teacher that cares about you, that is going to do like whatever it takes to help you get over these struggles, you can have those high expectations. You can make that student achieve more than they ever thought they were capable of. And I think that's the importance of having, a great teacher, is not just one that's somebody that cares about your students, right? Not just one that cares about the learning journey and that's flexible and it's going to do whatever it takes to help that student learn, but also one that's going to really push the student to learn more than they ever thought would be possible, right? Because of course
Be an emotional anchor. Is that
a what?
Be like an emotional anchor to the student.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the foundation, you have to have. But it's like at least I can go back in my journey. Like, we've all had these teachers, we love them, they're great teachers and everything like that. But maybe they didn't like push us. We just kind of like got by, right? And now you kind of look back and you're like, oh, that was a really great, lovely person, human being. But it's like, I think what I look back is, for the people that I feel have had the greatest impact on me have also been the ones that have pushed me the most, made me adjust, made me adapt, have made me become a better version of myself. And like, that's hard too, right? And sometimes those have been people that not everybody's going to relate to. Somebody that's just like that tough drill sergeant type of person that has high expectations. That's why I think you got to have those, as you mentioned, like the anchor, or that foundational stuff to really help students, guide them through their struggles and through that pathway of learning and challenges in the education.
Do you ever feel disappointed if a student isn't doing well? Do you feel like it's your fault for them doing bad in math?
Yes and no. I think with every student, I take a little bit of that personal responsibility for their education, their learning and stuff like that. So right off the bat, yes, I feel responsible. Any student that failed my class, I feel like I failed them, right off the top. And even if I feel like I know they didn't do what I asked them to do, or I know they weren't paying attention. They were skipping class, or they were cheating on their tests. I still feel myself responsible, because I always ask myself, what could I have done differently? What could I have done better to reach that student? What could I have done, to have a conversation with them, to better understand where they were coming from. So yeah, I do take kind of, I guess I'd say, full responsibility for every student, every grade that they kind of receive, even if I know it's something that they, earned all on their own, based on what they were doing and stuff like that. I hold that responsibility as well from as a teacher perspective.
Okay. I think I see what you're trying to say, but well, I mean, it's 54 minutes, so I'm not going to take up more of your time. But I had to ask you one last question.
You can have 6 more minutes. I got 6 more minutes if you want
to. Perfect. This is one more question. Okay. I know that teachers are like manual and automatic transmission cars. Teaching is more of a manual thing. You're doing it face to face with a student, right? Do you think that, it's obviously easier to just sit down and play a video, but do you think it benefits the student in some way, that if you feel like you're not able to teach this particular type of math properly to them, that maybe playing a video or automating it in some way helps?
Inside of a classroom setting?
Yeah.
I've never played a video inside of a classroom, to replace my teaching or instruction. I don't think I would be a big fan of that. And just because the reason being, I think that, I think there is that, capacity as far as in education, we all learn at different levels, right? We all learn at different speeds. And the reason being is we all have different circumstances or, for background information that we're trying to relate to what is being told or taught to us. I have no problem with a standardized, straight up lecture instruction of here is the, maybe doing an investigation, or here is the most important information of this lecture. Here is the base, right? And the teacher can provide that foundational approach. Maybe it could be the introduction of the lesson, or maybe some important problems or concepts. And let's just say from that one problem, and let's even say, from then, let's say the teacher is maybe not qualified to go on beyond that problem or whatever. But like they can give a decent foundation, decent approach from there. I don't like, just kind of in the same way you kind of run into a wall as far as one teacher to teach all the same way to like all the kids, and like everybody's going to everybody's going to absorb the information the same, which they're not. And so video, I think, is going to be the exact same thing. What I love about the online education is like, if you don't have access to certain courses or certain instructors, like you can be sitting anywhere in the world and watch somebody's videos and like get a decent education of like what they're teaching, right? You can be in 8th grade and be taking calculus from somebody on YouTube, right? Which like the middle school, like, oh, we don't offer calculus. Like, okay, cool. Like I'll go and watch calculus to, learn a whole bunch on my own. But I think what the power for online instruction, in my opinion, is the variety of what am I trying to say? Of the personalized approach. Whereas, let's just say you have 30 students inside your classroom. You can provide them with some general instruction to be able to work together, maybe to investigate some cool relationships. You can teach them some general stuff that they could get online, but at least they're there. Everybody's learning it at the same time, same way from the teacher. But then from there, you can get a much more personalized approach where if a student, needs some more foundational videos or like a different way of teaching what the teacher taught, they can get those videos, right? There can be instruction on there. If a student is like, this is boring, I'm just in here because I already know all this stuff, they can go into a much more advanced where they can actually be intrigued. Because like you think as like a classroom teacher, that is extremely difficult to do inside of a classroom setting day in and day out, because the planning that it takes to differentiate a full classroom instruction of like, okay, I need review materials, I need regular instruction, and I need advanced instruction. Like, yes, it can be done. I've done it inside my classroom. It just takes a ton of time and resources, not only to manage it, but to plan for it each and every day. So I think online instruction can definitely, I think, fill the void a lot for that. Not to say like the teacher just doesn't have to do any of it, but I think that can help fill in that void where a lot of times we're like, hey, you know what? There's might be, we're learning something. Here's this cool little mini course that if you have a good understanding or you've shown proficiency, you can go off, like maybe watch this on your own, like, and do some self-learning. Whereas maybe if somebody like, you're not understanding this, maybe take a little break and let's maybe watch this little mini course or video series to see if, relearning some of these older concepts might help you understand why we're doing what we're doing today. So like, I think it just provides a little bit more flexibility, and it can be used in that way and really to support teaching rather than just replacing teaching. I don't like the idea of like, oh, I'm going to turn off the lights and just show a video and now everybody understands. Like, it's just not going to, it's just like, it's not going to work that way.
Understood. I mean, interviewing you or chatting with you or however they say it has been exceptional at this point. I mean, just to speak to someone who I've actually learned from and who's like through the internet mentored me for 5 years of my life. It's a pretty big deal for me to interview you right now. So I would just like to say thank you so much for even agreeing to come on to this show. Thank you so much for corresponding with everything and agreeing with the timings and everything. Thank you for that. It was a pleasure having you on the show.
Absolutely. Well, I'm so happy we were able to connect, and I really had a fun time talking with you, and I wish you all the best.